The Florida Gators are 5-4, one win away from bowl eligibility in Billy Napier's first year. We're going to talk about the win over Texas A&M on Locked On Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We're available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. Happy Monday, happy Victory Monday. I'm Brandon Olson. Twitter is WNS_Brandon. Written work with Whole Nine Sports and Giants Country of SI.com. Before getting into it, it's a big win. We know. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. And now we're going to talk about the offense first. But there was something that was kind of talked about a bit in the Locked On Gators Discord. Link in the description below. That was talked about in the Locked On Gators Discord where, the offense, not great this year. Neither is the defense. We know that. I think maybe a more important thing to look at is that there are gradual changes and gradual fixes that have happened over time where it seems like every week Florida, they look better at something. They also then might regress in another area. But I think the important part is that, they're changing things. They're correcting these little negatives. And when you consistently correct those little things, over time, that will accumulate and make you look significantly better. We could also now talk about just the game from this past Saturday against Texas A&M. Florida, of course, won that one 41-24 after trailing 24-20 at the half. Anthony Richardson, that was one of the best games I've ever seen him play as a Florida Gator. I will give him absolute credit for that. It wasn't a fantastic game. I will say that. Like he made some mistakes, as every quarterback will. So there's that. But it was one of the best games that I've seen him play because he looked comfortable. And this is one of those things where you've got to figure it out for next year if you're Billy Napier. Assuming Anthony Richardson comes back, I think he should. We'll see what actually happens. But you got to figure it out why he's so much better on the road. And I get it that he pretty much says, hey, like I don't have 90,000 Gators fans cheering my success. No, instead you had 97,000, almost 98,000 Texas A&M fans. Obviously not all Texas A&M fans, but a bunch of people that were not cheering for you, and you played significantly better. Tennessee played significantly better. Utah had a ton of Utah fans in Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, and he played one of the better games of his career. I don't know why he looks so comfortable when people hate him, but would prefer you figure that out, Ant. But I will say that there are little things where we talk about where, the little things are picking up. Anthony Richardson, just in recent weeks especially, he's looked way more willing to throw the ball away when it's not there. He's always kind of thrown the ball away, but he did it as last-ditch efforts this past week, and even the Georgia game. He didn't do it when it was just him fighting for his life. Like he did it when it was the smart thing to do. Most of the time, we know that the fourth down throwaway against Georgia was a bad decision. There was a throwaway in the Texas A&M game where he probably should have just hit Xavier Henderson, who was waiting in the flat. But I think that's an important trait. I think the willingness to throw the ball away is something that is so often overlooked as a valuable quarterback trait. That's one of my things that I look for. Same way I look for a running back that can pass protect. I'm looking for a quarterback that is willing to throw the ball away, live to fight another down on certain times, and that's what he does. Hasn't thrown an interception since the Missouri game, which is just such a stark difference from what we were used to. We were used to, at least a pick a game. That was the expectation. Hasn't thrown a pick since the Missouri game. That's LSU, Georgia, and Texas A&M, two very good defenses and one above average defense. And I think that cannot be overlooked or overstated enough that he's getting better, like right in front of your eyes. I think that I'm someone who has been very harsh on Anthony Richardson. I accept that. That's totally fine. Anthony Richardson is growing right before our eyes. And a lot of people, yes, you're still hung up on things. I feel like a lot of times evaluation is like a month behind with the public perception where Gators fans like, oh, over the past month, he's had these stats. He sucks. Sure, whatever you want to say, but I think when you're evaluating a player like Anthony Richardson, who is so incredibly raw, you're kind of watching it week by week, seeing what he improves on. Throwing the ball away, improving. Not throwing interceptions, which you could argue those go hand in hand because you're not forcing a ball to a spot where you shouldn't force it. But I will say a lot of Anthony Richardson's interceptions, I don't think were him forcing a ball somewhere. I think a lot of them were just either a bad decision or like a bad read or a bad throw, like an inaccurate throw. Getting more aggressive as a scrambler in recent weeks. We've seen Anthony Richardson do that where it's like, hey, man, buckle up because guess what? It's nut cutting time. Like you got to figure it out. You got to get going. You got to win these games. Bowl eligibility is on the line. Everything is on the line in this game, and I think that that's something that really, really cannot be overstated for Florida Gators. And so figure it out. Like figure things out. We've been saying for weeks, if you want to win these games, Anthony Richardson has to run the ball. He's done that. He's made significant improvements to his game. I don't think that you can overstate that enough. Again, I think that is an incredibly overlooked trait, we'll say, from him against Texas A&M. He didn't throw the deep ball really at all. Like he didn't attempt it, but he was a killer in the intermediate 10 to 20 range. Like he demolished them the entire game. And I was shocked because a lot of guys can keep the ball short. A lot of guys can throw the ball deep. It takes actual skill to throw the ball in that intermediate range and find consistent success. And he did that against Texas A&M. Looking at the run game, Montrell Johnson, Trevor Etienne, elite running back duo. Against Texas A&M, they combined for 39 carries, 180 yards, 1 touchdown. That is ridiculous. First of all, 39 carries is a lot. That's what they need, by the way. I believe it was 22 for Montrell, 17 for Trevor Etienne. That is fantastic. Like that's what we're looking for there. That was just great. I loved it. Love seeing every bit of it. 13 missed tackles forced between the two of them. They had, I told you, 180 rushing yards. They had 158 of those after contact. That's a lot. That's also, by the way, offensive line played one of their worst games of the season. It was terrible. Offensive line played one of their worst games of the season this year, or this past week. But running backs still picked it up. Anthony Richardson still played a great game. Anthony Richardson had 92 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. He's willing to do it more often. He's done it more often. Ricky Pearsall getting multiple carries is fantastic. He got 3 carries. The first one the first time he got the ball, it was blown dead, but he had daylight in front of him. I think that if you're Billy Napier and you want to do all these, jet motions and all that, do it with Ricky Pearsall and actually give him the ball more often. Run the ball with Ricky Pearsall 3 to 5 times a game. It will help improve your entire offense because defenses will actually have to respect it. That's why I tell you, I don't care whether or not throwing the deep ball works. Throw the deep ball because it means that defenses are actually going to have to respect that you're willing to throw the deep ball. And that's one of the things where I feel like that's just like speaking into a void. I'm yelling at a brick wall and some of these things. But it's an important thing to remember when you're looking at, again, evaluating this team. What are you getting better at? That's what happened. I've mentioned it a couple weeks ago. Billy Napier started handing off the ball more and on those jet sweeps and those jet motions. And it's worked. It has. It's also helped open up other plays. It has. But early in the year, he was just faking it all the time and not actually running it. And it's like, well, no one is going to bite on it then if you're not willing to do it. It's not like play action. Play action, we know statistically, you do not have to be good at running the ball to be good at play action. That's a fact. That's statistics prove that. But with jet motion, you gotta be at least willing to do it. You don't have to be good at it. You gotta be at least willing to do it. And so Billy Napier, I commend you for improving and evolving. And I realize that the heat is on for a lot of these coaches right now with just the fan base, but they're improving, and you should all accept that. Speaking of massive improvements, we're about to talk about the Florida Gators defense, but first, as the sun comes out, and well, now it's going back away, but small businesses are back in business. Life is looking better again, right? LinkedIn Jobs makes it easier for you to grow your team. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy for you to find the people that you want to interview, maybe hire, because with, like screening questions, you can kind of narrow that list down and prioritize who you want to look to. You're busy, It's called a business because you're busy. You can't spend your time looking through all the non-qualifiers, we'll say. But don't take my word for it. Every week, nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn. They're looking there for a reason. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We're available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. When you're looking at this Florida Gators defense against Texas A&M, I think the thing that you have to talk about immediately, second half shutout. Like I mentioned in the last segment, Florida was down 24-20 at the end of the first half. Okay, halftime 24-20. Came out 141-24 in big part because your defense did not allow a single point in the second half. And I'm going to pull up this line right now just to look at how the possessions went for Florida against Texas A&M in the first half, because it went Texas A&M's offensive possessions. Touchdown on the first one, touchdown on the second one, field goal on the third one, punt on the fourth one, touchdown on the fifth one. So they had 5 offensive possessions in the first half, 3 touchdowns, a field goal, and 1 punt. 1. By the way, the game started total field goal, touchdown, 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 field goal, punt. So it took a while for a punt to happen anyway. First punt happened with 5 minutes left in the second half. Right? Is that even it? Or was it less than that? It was 2.5 minutes. Sorry. 2.5 minutes left in the second half in the first half is when we had the first punt. And then Texas A&M in the second half, their drives went punt, 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 fumble, turnover on downs, punt. Nothing short of absolute dominance from Florida's defense in the second half. 3-and-out-1 on the first drive, 3-and-out-2 on the second drive. You had a third 3-and-out on the fourth drive. You had, a fumble on third down on a later drive, and then a 3-and-out towards the end of the game where the defense just completely stuck up. And I will say, Haynes King, who started at quarterback for Texas A&M, I feel so bad for that kid, because in the fourth quarter specifically, it felt like he was getting hit on every drop back, and he was dropping back a lot. Princely Umanmielen, 6 pressures versus Texas A&M. Most he's ever had in a game. He's a redshirt sophomore. I know someone in the postcast was asking me about his eligibility. He's a redshirt sophomore. He's technically draft eligible if he wanted to go. I highly, highly doubt he will, but you probably get him for another year after this. Tied Brenton Cox for the most pressures by any Gator in a single game this season. Brenton Cox had 6 against LSU. Princely had 6 against Texas A&M. It was nothing short of a freak show for Princely Umanmielen against Texas A&M, especially in the second half. He came to life, he turned it up, and he showed, like, hey, man, I'm ready to be a very talented SEC pass rusher, and that's something that we have not had around. And now, Princely Umanmielen, second on the team in pressures. He had 11 going into that game, and he was 5th. Now he was 4th. He had those 6, and now he is 2nd. He's a freak, okay? He's got 17 pressures on the season. Elite performance against Texas A&M. I'm not going to say he's elite, but that was an elite performance against Texas A&M. There were 5 snaps for Princely Umanmielen dropped into coverage, which is tied for the most that we've seen him drop back in a single game this season. So again, you're seeing, like I mentioned, when Brenton Cox got kicked off the team, I was like, hey, maybe you're going to see more of that Princely dropping back, more of these other guys dropping back. Against Georgia, Princely dropped back 5 times. Against Texas A&M, Princely dropped back 5 times. Against LSU, he did it 4. Prior to that, never more than twice in a game. So Princely is playing, I believe, more of a stand-up role too. Let's see these snaps. He played, let's see, detailed positions, PFF. Thank you so much. Yeah, he played a bit as a stand-up edge rusher, not a ton, but more than he usually has, which is, I mean, that it's exciting for me at least. I like seeing it. He had one possession where he had one play against Texas A&M where he was like standing up completely off ball, which is great to see this versatility and creativity, and that's something that we've been looking for this defense, and something that I've been asking for this like second half of the season when it's like, hey, you gotta nut up or shut up, and you gotta win these games, and that's what they're doing. They're just saying no risk it, no biscuit. They're figuring things out, get more creative. Antoine Powell Ryland, who is replacing Brenton Cox Jr. I realize that a lot of people are like, I forgot which of the commentators. It might have been RG3 that said it when it was Florida versus Texas A&M. They're like Princely Umanmielen stepping into that Brenton Cox role. Not really. Princely's still playing that same end spot. He is sometimes standing up, sometimes hand in the dirt. He's not taking over Brenton Cox's role. He's replacing Brenton Cox's production, I'll say. But he's not necessarily taking over the jack spot. Maybe next year or something that we could look at. But no, the guy who is replacing Brenton Cox Jr. on the depth chart, Antoine Powell Ryland. 4 tackles, four run stops, which if you don't know, run stops, gain of 3 yards or less. That's what Antoine Powell Ryland had against Texas A&M, along with a sack, a pressure, and a forced fumble that was recovered by Lloyd Summerall in 99. Edge rushing looks good right now. It does. We'll see what happens when you're going up against a stronger offensive line. Texas A&M, of course, dealing with a slew of injuries and the flu and a whole bunch going on. So we'll see what happens. South Carolina, Spencer Rattler, I will say, better navigator in the pocket than Haynes King. So you got to look for that more creativity, more escapability, more mobility, and see what Princely Umanmielen is going to do against an actual starting offensive line, as well as Antoine Powell Ryland, what he will do against an actual starting offensive line. But expectations should be rising from this defense. Because you showed the second half, I don't care about who is out for Texas A&M. It's hard to shut a team out for an entire half. It's hard to do that. I don't care how much better you are than them. It's difficult to actually just string together that many plays consecutively without screwing up. That's one of the reasons Georgia's so good, is that they don't screw up a ton like that. Like, they are very good. They're incredibly talented players, but no matter who they play against, it's very rare to see them just crumble and have these big mental errors that give up big mistakes. That's not what really happens with them. That's what Florida's working towards. Also, man coverage. We saw it again against Georgia. We saw it, I believe it was 33% of the time. At least, like, obviously, it was called more probably, but 33% of the time when they actually passed the ball. I don't have the numbers for Texas A&M yet for the percentages, but I will say that it was definitely more than we've usually seen, which is expected. Again, that's one of the ways that you could have taken out this Texas A&M offense, is that it's so basic and kindergarten that you could do that. But the defense has been playing better in man coverage. Also, here's the thing. They've been calling man coverage all year. They're just calling it more now. So let's not act like the defense didn't play man coverage before and all of a sudden it's this revolutionary thing. They're just doing it more, which is similar to how I was talking about with the offense, where I'm like, every week you're seeing these new things that they're fixing and they're correcting and they're trying out and they're trying to make it work. That's what's happening here. You're seeing more man coverage and it's working. So you're going to continue to see more man coverage. But you have to realize this is a process. This is an evaluation year for Florida, where Patrick Toney, Billy Napier, Sean Spencer, Rob Sale, they're all in there like, hey, man, what do we have? What can we do? What are our strengths? What shouldn't we do? All that. They're figuring it out. This team is getting better. That's an important factor here, where I'm not going to say, if you played Georgia in a few weeks, you'd win. No. But what I am saying is, if Kentucky wasn't week 2, if Kentucky was next week or Vanderbilt week, you're probably looking at a pretty different game. Because against Kentucky is probably the most damning part, where it was zone coverage a lot and Kentucky exploited you whenever they did throw the ball. And you're looking at a different Anthony Richardson than you had in week 2. He's still inconsistent. We know that. but he's getting better. He's taking steps to get where he has to go. And this defense is doing that as well. Blitzing, the past few weeks, we've seen Ventrell Miller and Amari Burney have or be used more as pass rushers than we've seen before. And that's no accident. You're playing against teams that like to run the ball. You're playing against teams that have mobile quarterbacks. You're playing against teams that have strong offensive lines. You're playing against teams that you want to play man coverage against. When you play man coverage, unless you're doubling somebody, that takes up 5 DBs or 5 players, really, because it could be linebackers, but that takes up 5 players. You're probably rushing 4. That means you have 2 other guys that you can figure out what you're going to do with. You can call cover 2 man and have 2 safeties deep. You can call cover 1 robber, have a safety deep, and have a linebacker in a hook zone underneath. You can blitz a linebacker. Florida's figuring it out. Florida's doing these things, and they're getting creative with it, and that's exactly what they have to do. We're about to talk about players who need to play more, especially as we get towards the end of the season here. But first, the Florida Gators are currently 24-point favorites against Stony Brook tomorrow night. I'm telling you, I have no idea what I should be betting, but I'm betting that they will cover the spread just because, let's do it. Let's let it ride. Why not? Make sure you check out BetOnline. They've got basketball, football. I mean, there's right now you're in that perfect like sports equinox, what they call it. Baseball just ended, but you can bet on so many sports. So check out BetOnline. It's where the game starts. To wrap up today's show, we're talking about some players on this Florida Gators roster that need to play more because this is something that we were talking about before the Georgia game, anticipating a loss in the Georgia game, which obviously we know happened, where it was like, hey, once you get towards the end of the season, you could probably play younger guys more. Not necessarily that it's not Madden where just playing more automatically makes you better, but getting them more experience, getting them more reps, and getting them used to it and being like, hey, what do we have for next year? Maybe one of these guys is ready to help us finish this year strong and step up and things like that. And I mean, you're kind of seeing it. Let's look at Caleb Douglas. Caleb Douglas is the first guy I wanted to talk about. Caleb Payday Douglas. A lot of people got introduced to him against Eastern Washington because he was the one that Jalen Kitna was targeting deep down the sideline 3 times, completed one of them. I think it was for like 52 yards and a touchdown. Big play. Big time player there. He's shown up every time his number's been called this season. Like, he's not on the field not making plays. He had the touchdown against Eastern Washington. He had, I believe it was against Texas A&M, 3 catches for 25 yards and a touchdown on 3 targets. He's shown up. He's got great size, great athleticism, great straight line speed. He's going to work with Kerry Colbert to get more consistent and better, more technically refined. And also, clearly, he's got the trust of that quarterback room. Anthony Richardson targeted him 3 times, which is not something that he did with many other receivers. I'll pull up the numbers right now, and I'll tell you exactly how many he did. But Jalen Kitna was intentionally just like staring him down. He's like, hey, like, I'm throwing this to Caleb Douglas. Like, it's as simple as that. But Anthony Richardson had 28 pass attempts, and Caleb Douglas had 3 catches, second on the team behind Jaquavian Frazier's and Xavier Henderson. So Caleb Douglas needs to play more. Young kid, has been productive every time he's been asked to do it. He's, I believe, played in 4 games this season. Only 2 of them has really played offense, but 2 of them he was on the field, wasn't targeted. And so he's got 1 more game before he burns his red shirt, and I don't think that they care about keeping his red shirt. I don't. I think especially now, yeah, I'll say it, the red shirt has never been less valuable than it is now. Because you run the risk of guys transferring. You have so many guys that want to say 3 years and then go to the league, 4 years max and then go to the league, where the red shirt doesn't really mean as much as it does. And here, we can at least rotate you in and get a few reps, Maybe for the lower 3 stars, it's like, hey, like, we're going to redshirt you the first year. You're not ready. And then you'll still have 4 years of playing time, which is a bright idea. Another guy, Jonathan Odom, tight end. He's someone who I did not think would be in the starting lineup because, again, I've said it, there's tight ends, but there's kind of 2 different responsibilities at the tight end spot. Jonathan Odom and Dante Sanders kind of share the same skill set. Keon Zipper and Dante Sanders were complementary, and I thought that, they'd bring in a complementary guy. No, they put Jonathan Odom in. It was the right decision. I think he did a great job blocking in the run game. I realized that PFF had I think it was an average grade for him, which isn't bad, but it's not great. I think he did a very good job. I loved the tenacity of getting downfield and blocking people, like that long Anthony Richardson touchdown. I think it was 61 yards, something like that. Jonathan Odom was downfield blocking. He was downfield. He was running. He was trying to keep up with Anthony Richardson, but he was downfield running. I'd love to see him get more opportunities as a blocker with Keon Zipper being injured for an undisclosed amount of time. I'd like to see Jonathan Odom be used more as a run blocker, be used maybe as a pass blocker. That one I can't really say because I don't think we've ever seen him in pass protection. If I'm not mistaken, I'd like to see him be used as a safety valve, red zone type of threat. Like you don't need every tight end to be athletic and be able to run after the catch like Keon Zipper, like Kamori Gamble last season. You don't need that. Sometimes you just need a guy who's ready to convert first downs for you, ready to get in the end zone for you. That's what Jonathan Odom could probably be. And he's young. Get him as much playing time as you can and get him experience. So next year, he could be one of your starters because he probably should be. Jonathan Odom deserves to play. Looking at the defensive side of the ball, I have 3 names here. Two of them, one of them I know you're going to agree with. One of them, I'm assuming you're going to say, why is he even on this list? He plays enough. And one of them is one that we know is going to play more as time goes on because he's now getting an expanded role. But the first one, Kamari Wilson. We all know, yes, he should be playing more. Safeties have not been playing well. Either of the safeties have not been playing well. I want to make that very clear that I'm not just like, haha, trading, let's troll. No, Rashad Torrance hasn't been playing well either. So let's not get it twisted. That is what it is. Like if we're gonna be honest about evaluating here, then we're gonna be honest about evaluating. But no, Kamari Wilson has not played much this year, or at all, really. This past week, he had 16 snaps against Texas A&M. Against Georgia, he played, if I'm not mistaken, let me say 6 snaps. LSU 22, Missouri 7, Eastern Washington 65. Obviously, he started because Trey Dean was injured. Tennessee 19, USF 8, Kentucky 11, Utah 8. He's been used very inconsistently. I'd like to see that get a little more consistent. I'd like to see him get more playing time, especially as you're getting to the tail end. There's 3 regular season games left, and then maybe a bowl game. I think you have to get him playing more. You look at another guy that I'm going to talk about, Shamar James is the one that I was like, you guys are probably going to think he plays enough. His playing time has decreased kind of significantly in recent weeks. You look at how he started the year. 30 against Utah, 36 against Kentucky, 31 against South Florida, 33 against Tennessee, 39 against Eastern Washington, 13 against Missouri, 33 against LSU, 42 against Georgia, and then 15 this past week. I don't know what it is that he's had 2 weeks in the past 4 games where he's played less than 20 snaps. It's not because the defense hasn't been on the field. Defense has been on the field plenty. I don't know why he's starting to play less. Lloyd Summerall had 12 snaps against Texas A&M. I thought it'd be more, but we've seen him have 20 snaps against Eastern Washington, 18 against Missouri, 5 against Kentucky, 5 against LSU, 12 against Texas A&M. Like to see him play more. I think we will see him play more. It came up big, and yeah, I think that when you're this late in the season, you give these young guys more reps because these are guys that should be kind of foundational cornerstones of your defense. Give them the reps. It's just simple. Give them the reps so that next year you're not throwing them into the fire as starters. You don't have to start them, but give them reps. And here's the thing. You got 3 regular season games left. You need to win one of them to get bowl eligibility. You have 3 teams on your schedule that are not great. I think you've got a little bit of breathing room in saying, hey, let's play these younger guys. And if we need to pull them, we pull them. But let's play them and get them some meaningful reps. And that's an important part that's often overlooked. But that's it for me. That's it. Thank you for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We're going to be back later today. We've got the women's basketball preview coming out at noon. Game is at 2 for the women's basketball game, 7 p.m. for the men's basketball game. Depending on time-wise, I don't know how I'm going to do it this year with going live after games for basketball. There's too many for me to do it every game. But I will be doing it as frequently as I can. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC, hosted by Chris Gordy of Sports 790. Get the best coverage on the best conference, including the best university, University of Florida. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olson. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Whole Nine Sports and Giants Country of SI.com. And I'll see you all tomorrow.